An initiative of the Greater Des Moines Partnership formed in 2007, the Business Innovation Zone, the BIZ, exists to connect entrepreneurial needs with qualified resources and to provide guided professional and business direction. The BIZ helps entrepreneurs maximize their successes by helping them navigate resources, strengthen knowledge, improve skills, form strategic alliances, and secure proper capitalization. To find out more about the BIZ, visit www.bizci.org.
Thank you all for coming. Oh my gosh, look at this room. This is great. I'm Mike Caldwell. I work for the Greater Des Moines Partnership. I am basically responsible for all their entrepreneurial initiatives, including the Business Innovation Zone, which is here for high growth potential startups, starting from I have an idea and I don't know what to do next, to raising capital, which we might talk a little bit about today. Helped quite a few people go through that process. I also run the Plains Angels along with Tej Dalwan, which is an angel investor group here in the area, both in Des Moines and now there's a nascent chapter in Iowa City, Cedar Rapids that's getting going. Next meetings for both of our, both the Biz networking lunches like this and the Plains Angels are actually in January. We take December off. Trying to do a meeting in December is just a nightmare. So we just take that month off. There's business cards for myself out on the table. If you want to get a hold of me, talk to me, happy to talk to you more about this and anything you want to talk about entrepreneurial. Let's see. John and I go back way back. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been 10 years. We were on the radio the other night together. I think we've known each other 7 years.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think it is.
Could have sworn it was longer than that.
No, I got to town in 2006.
All right, cool.
So in one of his many other startups. So John's truly a serial entrepreneur, and today we're going to talk about a bunch of different things, and we'll open up for questions in a little bit. But just to start off, two things. One, first of all, go back and talk a little bit about how you got into doing startups, because I know you're not 18. I know you're a little
right. Yeah.
Because your daughters are 9 and 12, so I know you're not 18.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about your background. How did you get to the startup thing?
So I was graduated from University of Iowa, degree in marketing. Took a couple jobs out of school with some consumer products companies. One of them, I was the youngest person, and they assumed that I knew the most about technology, which is accurate. I did, but that's not saying a whole hell of a lot. Yeah, right. It's not saying a lot. I could navigate Excel, basically. And so they would put me on all these business projects that involve technology. And so I would have to go through and make sure that they were performing appropriately, and ultimately they would crash all the time and they would be very buggy. And so eventually I got to the point where I asked the developers, hey, is there a way that I could look at your code and maybe help you, figure out what's wrong? So I did, and that was my first introduction to kind of tech and code. Yeah. And from there, met a guy who asked me if I wanted to develop a piece of software, and being young and foolish in my early 20s, I said, yeah, sure, why not? So I bought
That's how it goes. It's the ignorance.
Right, ignorance, right. You don't know what you can't do. And so I bought a book on, and any programmers in here will probably laugh, but on Visual Basic programming.
Sure.
And created a prototype that we sold into Ace Hardware Corporation, and the rest is history.
History. Yeah. And I met you at the other end of that journey when you were running your last good-sized company. So tell us a little bit about Bawte. A lot of people don't know what Bawte is and how a consumer would use it.
Sure.
Let's start there.
So, being that everything that I've done up to this point is consumer products based, maybe it helps to kind of give a little bit of a background. So bought a keyboard for my daughter. It was a Yamaha keyboard, and out of the box came all this paper. So instructions and warranty information and product registration cards and God knows what else, because I didn't actually keep it. I threw everything away. and I thought,
you recycled it.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Let's go there.
Yeah,
I recycled it.
Yeah.
Recycling is closer to my door anyway, so if I can, I throw it in the recycling bin. So I thought, there's got to be a way as you know, one of my previous companies dealt a lot in barcoding and UPC coding. And so I was like, there's got to be a way where I could just scan a code and get all this information electronically, and maybe Yamaha knows that I purchased this, so if I ever needed any assistance, that could be there, and get all this stuff digitally. And I started looking around, and I figured that there'd have to be something out there, and this was back in 2011, 2012, and there was nothing for it. So I'm like, well, it kind of combines technology and consumer products companies together into one, and so I decided to create Bawte. Because when out of school I had those jobs with those consumer products companies, I realized that we looked at our customer as Staples and Office Depot and Walmart and Target, when really the customer was the person using those products. And because of the way retail works, the people that make the products and the people that use the products have the most loosely defined relationship, right?
If any relationship.
If any relationship.
Right.
And so what Bawte does is, in essence, from the consumer's perspective, is it's one place for everything that you own. For every bit of information you're ever going to need about that product, that's what Bawte aims to be for the consumer. And from a manufacturer's perspective, it's really bridging that gap so that they can develop a relationship with their end customer.
So you've got a couple of manufacturers that have started working with you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what incentive, because everybody, the tough part is the first 2 or 3 customers, right? Then you start up. After you get a few, you can start to build. But talk about the first couple of customers and what compelled them to sign up.
So it takes the right type of customer, and it's unfortunate because they don't hang a sign on their building or put it on their website that says we are the right type of customers. But it definitely takes somebody who is a little bit forward thinking and understands risk reward. Because obviously working with a small company, there are definite risks.
We're all perfectly
stable. Yep.
They all work.
And so it really takes, from our perspective, it took getting and finding companies that understood the magnitude of what we would ultimately bring to them and the benefit of being on that bleeding edge as opposed to a fast follower or just your follower. So it took a lot. I mean, it hasn't been, everybody I talk to says absolutely and just bows down and opens their checkbook, which would be nice.
Which would be nice.
But the way this industry works, and most are, everybody likes to see some sort of precedent set. And so ultimately, once we get those guys implemented, it will trickle down and it'll be a lot easier. The process will be a lot easier.
So have you publicly announced any customers working with you yet?
Yeah, we're working with two customers that we're pretty far along with are Ariens, they're ARIENS. They do snow blowers, so they're out of Wisconsin. They're going through it, as well as Pella out of Pella.
Out of Pella.
Out of Pella, right?
Yeah.
It's always good when those two things match up.
Yeah, you hope.
And so they're actually launching a new product line very shortly, and Bawte is going to be integrated throughout the entire process, as well as GE Appliances, who we're going through implementation right now with them.
And it's worth saying, but when you're putting something into a box or onto a consumer products, the amount of time from when they say yes to when a customer actually sees it, what's that looking like with GE products?
Yeah, so what we do is we actually like to do things in pieces. So we look at new product introductions. We look at products that are going through some sort of redesign or repackaging as really easy, quick ways. But even with those, it's probably 3 months out.
Quick.
That's quick.
That's really quick on the supply chain.
The bigger products, the ones that are more established and getting it, because they have to burn through inventory, they got to build it into the process. That's definitely like a 6-month process.
I think one of the things John and I both share a knowledge of the consumer product space and have geeked out on UCC standards and all this crazy stuff. But consumer product is such a crazy world because there's so much front end. I mean, you're ordering products in March for the fall, and I put all my orders in for Christmas inventory in my company. I put them in July to get them built so I could actually get them in time.
Yeah, especially with sourcing. Now, overseas there's a lot of sourcing, and so, those orders are very big, and they have to be done well in advance.
Right.
So
one of the things that really compelled me to have you come in and talk to the group was Techstars. Mm-hmm. And so, first of all, maybe I think it'd be worth talking about what Techstars is, but talk about how you found out, or how you found the connection to Techstars, because I think it's kind of interesting how you ended up there.
Yeah, absolutely. So Techstars is a technology accelerator. You know about them. It's basically what they do is they put you through a program that accelerates your business and condenses about 9 to 12 months of work into a 3-month period. It's very intensive, and they're very selective.
Right.
So Techstars is one. Y Combinator is probably the best known, like Silicon Valley based one. But yeah, the way I found out about it was there's a lot of moving pieces. I never really considered doing a Techstar or an accelerator, only because I have a wife, I have 2 kids, and they're typically not in Des Moines. And so leaving
the wife and kids are in Des Moines, the accelerator.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Be clear about that.
Yes, exactly. So I wasn't really actively looking to get into an accelerator, because I felt that would be selfish, and that's 3 months away from your family. And so I'll loop in Brad. So one of Brad's former employees, George Juergens, put Bawte on Product Hunt, and this was back in March. And I had never heard of Product Hunt before. He sent me some Facebook message that said, "How would you describe Bawte in 1 sentence?" And I was in the middle of something, and I'm like, "Well, I'll get to it later." Finally, I got to it, and he's like, "Oh, never mind, I did it myself."
How'd he do?
Apparently pretty well. So, and I still had no idea what Product Hunt was, but now Product Hunt is a much bigger deal. And we percolated. I think we were in the top 5 by the end of the day.
All right.
And a couple days later, I was cleaning out my junk mail and saw a message that didn't quite look like junk. And usually I'm just Command A and delete and get rid of everything. But this one I actually opened up, and it was from a gal named Nicole Glaris, managing director of Techstars out of Boulder, Colorado.
Yep.
And she said, "Hey, saw you on Product Hunt." And I'm like, "Okay, how would you like to talk?" And so had a nice 30-minute discussion with her on Skype, or as nice as it can be over Skype. And she said at the end, "Have you ever thought about applying to Techstars?" And I was brutally honest, and I said, "No." I said, "No. I my wife would kill me if I decided to do that." So she said, "Well, if you ever do, let me know." And I said, "Okay." And so when I got off the phone, I told Melissa, my wife, about that, and she as she always does, she researched everything. And the next morning, she came down and she's like, "You need to apply for Techstars."
Really?
And I'm like, "I don't think you understand what you're saying." I'm like, you realize this is 3 months away in Boulder, Colorado. Right. And she's like, "Yeah, no, I know, but it's
18-hour days, 7 days a week."
Yeah, it is not like, "Oh, I'm coming home on the weekends." Oh. It is very, very intensive. And I told her, I said, "You know what? Okay, fine, I'll do it. But there's a less than 1% chance that I'm going to get into this thing. So, I'll apply." So I applied. I told Nicole. She said, "Fantastic." Got the email that says, "Hey, you're on to the next round. You can either pitch via Skype," and I'm not a big fan of Skype, by the way. I think the quality is,
it's coming through.
Yeah, really, it's coming through. Okay. Or you can fly out to Boulder. And I said, "Flying out to Boulder is really expensive. Do I do it? I hate Skype." So I ended up flying out there. I spent $600 to fly out to.
It's because you love the mountains. It has nothing to do with
Right,
it.
exactly.
No,
that's why I drink Coors Light.
Yep. That's right.
So I flew out there and had one of our developers who actually decided to move out to Boulder a couple months prior pick me up. Luckily, it's 75 miles an hour because I had flight delays, and I got to the office about 10 minutes prior.
Wow.
And they then open a door, you walk into a room, and they say, go. And you have all these people in front of you, and you pitch. And then they bombard you with questions.
Right.
And then, I went back and I'm like, well, I don't know if it went well.
No feedback, right?
No feedback.
See ya, thank you. Right.
And then, I got the email. It says, congrats, you're on to the next round. And then Nicole, I was in Chicago and she flew out to Chicago and we had about a 2-3 hour meeting. And then it was like, hey, we'd love to have you. And then it's like shit really started getting real because it's like, oh no.
Oops. They said yes.
Yeah, exactly. Now what?
It's
and
like the
so
first big order. Oh,
yeah.
we got to ship it, don't we?
So then it was a big rush to formalize, banking and employment, and because now we would have employees, and now we needed to raise some money, and now it's all this stuff within 3 weeks
right.
of actually
you actually
having
have to be
move.
incorporated. You have to actually have a structure.
Everything has to be there.
Investable. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Cap table has to look good, so make sure your cap tables are good.
Did you have one?
Well, we had a cap table, but it did not look good.
Oh, okay. So you went out there. For those of you who don't know about Techstars, it's in any of the accelerators, one of the things you do is you pitch a lot.
Yeah.
In the first few weeks, you'll pitch 80 to 120 times on average in an accelerator. You pitch 5 to 6 times a day, and you get feedback every time, and at night you get to change your pitch and update and refine how you do it and do it again, and that's how you get 9 to 12 months of feedback. So you went through that process. What was that like?
In hindsight, it was great. While I was going through it, it was absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Because everybody has an opinion, and ciphering through and siphoning all that information and figuring out what's valid and what's not, what to listen to and who to listen to,
right.
and what pieces, it's very taxing. And when I got there, Nicole said, she sat me down and she's like, we don't do single founders. Well, I was a single founder, and so I'm like, I assume I'm still in the program. You knew this when you said
right.
I could be here, right? And she's like, no. She's like, it's just that this process is so taxing that it's easier to offload it onto 2 people than it is to have a single founder.
So she's trying to tell you she's going to...
That it's going to be, it's going to be pretty brutal. And it was. It got me, there were times where I was like, boy, if I could just work like a 9-to-5 job, I'm like, I wonder what's going on in Des Moines with jobs. And it's not that you seriously consider this stuff, but it's just easier than the alternative.
Oh, yeah.
And so it was definitely one hell of a process.
Don't you think that's good prep for someone that's really starting something?
Oh,
because
absolutely.
there are those times when you just have to go all out.
Yeah. It's definitely, I can definitely say that me personally, the business and the product have come out way stronger than when we went in. And I don't care how masochistic you are not going to be able to put yourself through that process
right.
that they did, because it's to the point where I would have stopped, long before doing that.
If it was up to you,
if it was up
quit.
to me, absolutely.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense. So what you talked about some of the benefit, but go into a little bit deeper. What happened? Where were you when you went in? Where were you when you came out? What really changed in the company? Because you'd gone through some pivots and changes.
Yep.
Because you'd been at this a couple of years
yep.
before you went into Techstars, which by the way is more common than most people know.
Yeah.
Accelerators aren't about new companies that just started up. They're usually about companies that have got some traction, got some things going, and are accelerating up.
Yeah.
It's not an incubator.
Yeah, it started out, if you go back to when accelerators started, they used to be kind of like idea stage companies. Right. And as they've matured, accelerators have now become more, it's a company with a product and a team, and now they just need to
you need something to
moving.
accelerate. Right, and an idea isn't always something that's far enough along
right.
to actually say I can accelerate it.
Right. So, so one of the big things is how we talk about Bawte, and this came through in our pitching. Is that we would always talk about, do we talk about the consumer side or do we talk about the manufacturer side, and do we ping pong back and forth on that message? And what if anybody's seen my demo day pitch or Melissa pitch, it was very manufacturer focused, because it looks at the consumer through the manufacturer's eyes. So one of the things that we got a lot of clarity on was how we just talk about it from the manufacturer's perspective. The second thing is that we relied on consumers coming to us for information, and what we realized is that we need to go to consumers for the information that they need when they need it. So notifying them of recalls, notifying them before warranty.
So push versus pull.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if I'm requiring you to do something, you're probably not going to remember to do it. But if I can tell you,
You know me well.
yeah, and not
I know you are. I know you are. The consumer, that's true
but
though.
ultimately, it's things like, hey, it's time to change the water filter in your
Well, and I
refrigerator.
think about recalls, because to me one of the big benefits is recalls. Especially, you talk in the past we've talked people with young children where they're buying all the baby stuff, which is high reward, high risk stuff. If the crib is great, it's great, but if it's got a fault and it's going to fold up on you, that's a huge problem. So recalls, they got to be pushed.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to know right now, and we're seeing it with the car industry where they're fumbling over the whole airbag recall system is, as we can see, is still not where it needs to be. So
Yeah, I mean, how many in this room know that Black Diamond recalled some ski poles?
right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. No.
Nice try.
Nobody, because it's not like the first thing you do when you get to work is pull up the cpsc.org and look through the
Well,
recalls.
and to use General Motors, they don't have the name of everybody that owns the car currently. They might have an idea who bought the car to begin with, but if the car's 11 years old, the reality is it's changed hands 3 times.
Yep.
So good luck chasing that down across state lines,
Yep.
because the motor vehicle groups don't talk to each other. I mean, it's
the
a
reality.
big issue.
Yep,
But it goes
absolutely.
back to the manufacturer responsibility.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, recalls, down to, it would have been great, hey, John, it's time to winterize your lawnmower. Here's how you do it.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how many times I go and finally pull out my, snowblower to go, I should probably have done something like that.
Yes.
Right? You don't.
Before it's 20 below at 5 a.m. and it won't start.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
don't think of the things that you don't think of because they're not top of mind.
Well, everybody's looking for subscription services, and a lot of us that own homes have lawnmowers, snowblowers. The idea that you could have somebody just every year send you the kit in the mail that says, here, do this, and here's all the instructions. I mean, not everybody do it, but a lot of people go, yeah, give me one of those. That's a good deal.
Yep. And it even boils down to things like parts and accessories and being able to go, hey, I need, not to dwell on lawnmowers,
No.
but I need a new blade for this
Right.
lawnmower.
Right.
I know that it's actually going to fit your lawnmower because I stood in Home Depot and
Stared at the wall.
Stared at this 4-foot planogram of 1,000 different blades, and just like, I don't even know who makes my lawnmower, let alone the size or the model.
You're lucky to remember you have one. Is that what you're saying?
I actually got it wrong. I thought it was a Toro. It was red.
I like it. It was red.
Whoops. It was red.
We knew it was
That's
red.
right.
I can see you going to the hardware store. What kind of mower you got? Well, it's red.
Red.
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Well, so you mentioned Melissa. How many of you got to see Melissa pitch? So for those of you who didn't, what a treat. Would you like to tell the story?
Yes, this is a pretty crazy story. So our demo day was the day after Rise of the Rest. Tej had said, hey, you should apply for this, so I applied, not quite knowing how the logistics
So should I tell them what Rise of the Rest is?
Yeah.
So Rise of the Rest, for those of you who don't know, Steve Case, who was the founder of AOL, a very, very wealthy guy, did this whole program this year called Rise of the Rest. He got a bus, he loaded it with people, and they drove city to city, and they did 10 cities, 5 at one time, and then stopped and did 5 more, and Des Moines was one of them. And the deal was you got to pitch if you got picked as one of the top 10s, and the winner got a $100,000 investment in their company from Steve Case. And even better, they got the investment at their terms. So Steve took your term sheet, which is a big deal. For those of you in the investment world, yeah, I'll just accept your term sheet blindly, sure. And the investment guys are going, no, I won't. But that was what the pitch was for, so let's set it up.
Yes. So that was the pitch. It just so happened to be the afternoon before demo day.
Which is in Boulder.
Which is in Boulder.
Right.
So I'm somehow kind of trying to create this time machine. How can I do everything that I need to? And so demo day for Boulder is a little bit, they changed it a little bit. Typically it's you go and you pitch
to this big audience once. Well, Nicole likes to switch things up a little bit, and we started at 7:30 in the morning and did 11 pitches in a row. So we did Folsom Field, which is where the Colorado CU is located, and that's their football stadium. Skyboxes. They had 11 skyboxes, and what they did is they stuffed them full of VCs and Angels. And we walked. So we went into one, we pitched. There was probably a minute for some small talk Q&A, moved to the next one, moved to the next one, moved to the next one, to the point where I started hallucinating.
I was going to say, did you even know where you were?
That's a totally different story.
11 straight.
But yeah, that started at 7:30 in the morning, so it's not like I could have taken a red eye or done anything and gotten. So logistically, it was impossible. So Tej was like, "Well, what about Melissa?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't think so." He's like, "Well, ask her."
Ask her, right?
So I sent her a text, and she writes back, and she's like, "Was this intended to go to someone else?" I'm like, no, I actually got it right. So she, at first, and so my brother is right back there in the pink shirt, and he'll tell you, if you ask Melissa something, the first answer is going to be no, and then eventually she kind of comes around and thinks about it. And so eventually she, within the hour, she's like, well, what would I have to do, and how would you be doing, what would you, and so I explained it to her, and so I took our demo day presentation, and I tweaked it a little bit, changed a little bit at the front, a little bit at the end. I took my script and I converted it and gave her a script. We did this Google Doc of potential questions and answers. It turned out to be like a 4 or 5 page Google Doc.
Yep.
We went through it, spent probably about 4 hours on Google Hangouts just going through stuff and different ways that you can ask the same question of distribution and scale and user adoption, all kind of culminating into the same answer. And then that morning I was like, well, give them hell.
Have fun.
Do your best.
Right.
Yeah, so she went and pitched and won the damn thing.
She did.
So it was pretty amazing.
And it was an amazing day because I think a lot of people here will agree. There were 9 pitches total, I think, and I would say at least 5 were really, really good. And the others weren't bad. It was a tough crowd. That was not an easy crowd to pitch to.
Yeah.
So yes, I sent you a text about your wife afterwards.
I know.
Everybody did. I think he got bombarded because
Yeah.
it was amazing.
Yeah, the first text I got was actually from Jordan Lampy from
Koala.
And he just said, congrats with a smiley face. And I'm like,
What's this about?
nah,
it can't be.
And then Twitter just starts going
Oh, yeah.
crazy and
Oh.
my phone starts going.
And your wife was in the newspaper the next day.
And then I just heard how good she did and that you better not screw it up tomorrow.
Yeah, don't blow it. Yeah, the pressure's on you. Now that your wife just went and won 100K, you got to do something. So let's open up for some questions. Does anybody have any questions for John they'd like to ask?
During that, I didn't see it, but did she memorize the whole pitch, or was she working off of
She memorized.
She memorized?
And
Yeah.
how long did she have to do that?
How long did she have to memorize? She did it in less than a week.
It's worth noting she does do some sales.
Yeah, she does. She pitches. So she works. She's an independent consultant for this company called Cabby, which is clothing. And she pitches in front of groups of women and sells clothes and stuff like that. And has to memorize a much longer presentation than the 4 or 5 minutes that I put together. So she's really good at presenting and very personable, and I think that came across really well. But yeah, she had a week to memorize and get the transitions. And the transitions, by far and away the hardest part.
Right.
Knowing what to click and when, and knowing whether the slides have ceased to work, or if that's just the delay in the video, because there's a lot of video split up
Right.
among slides.
Right.
Yeah.
The back.
You think you could have won it if you hadn't participated in Techstars?
Would you have won it if you hadn't participated in Techstars?
Probably not.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that allowed us to present very well was, obviously Melissa did a great job in the presentation, but I spent 13 weeks
Right.
refining every single word and every single slide, and I mean, and they're not like happy, like, oh, maybe you should change this. They're like, pardon my word, they're like, that fucking sucks. I don't understand that. You got to change that.
Right.
I mean, and that's
They're in your face.
That is in the face. I mean, because they want you better than what you. And so they're going to be very blunt and honest with you. And so I don't think I don't think our pitch would have been as good had we have not gone through that process.
And I can tell you something real quick before the question. I think there's this perception that accelerators are this, philanthropic entity. Nothing could be farther from the truth. Techstars is a VC group. They are there to make money. They invest in you, time and money, and more time than money, and they expect great things out of you. We're going through it because we're associated with Techstars through the GAN, with the Global Insurance Accelerator, and it is extremely clear this is about making money. So if they don't think you're doing it right, they're going to tell you, and there's no guarantee of graduation either.
Yeah.
You are not guaranteed a pass through the out.
Or pitching.
Right.
You have to have a certain pitch rating in order to be able to actually get up there and pitch. Because they don't want you getting up there and being some, jackhole that just, it's like, that looks very
They're not going to let you take them down.
Absolutely.
In the back, Milt.
John, you talked about changing the pitch, but have you changed anything in your operations or your marketing focus or product or anything like that?
Yeah, how'd the rest of the company change?
Yeah, so, I mean, the product changed dramatically. As we talked about that reactive versus proactive approach, it required kind of a major overhaul in everything that we did. And I felt really bad for the developers during this process because I'd get done with, some meeting and I'd be like, we got to change this. And then like 5 minutes later, be like, nope, don't do that.
Yeah, developers love that.
Yeah, they love that.
Yeah.
And so I tried to incorporate all of our developers as much as I could through that process. But because we went from this like, hey, we'll store your information to, hey, put your information in and we'll communicate out to you, it required basically a wholesale change when it came to the technology platform.
Did you get a lot of good contacts out of it, Techstars?
Got a lot of great VC contacts,
Yep.
investor contacts, pretty much from the consumer products company, so our customers, probably not as much, but I've been selling to them for
You know
3
most of them
years,
anyway.
So I got it in there.
Right.
Regardless of what you charge for your product, it seems like a no-brainer. It's a win for everybody. What are some of the reasons a customer's told you no? And maybe not a not yet, but everybody just said, I don't want this. Is there share that with us?
Yeah, what are you getting, what are the reasons for rejection?
I haven't heard a no. I've heard a not yet. And typically it has to do with internal resources. I mean, as with everything, somebody has to be, as much as we have focused on offloading that, there's still a perception of, well, we have to do something. And that's valid. So it's typically, hey, this looks really cool, this is awesome. I don't think we have somebody who can, spearhead this.
Right.
So there's been delays, but there haven't been any. I haven't gotten anybody that goes, this makes absolutely no sense.
A follow-up?
To that then is, so your product, I've seen it from the consumer side, again, it makes total sense. On the back end, you're managing warranty information, 5,000 SKUs, you got to have it from you. Is the vision to help them manage that, and maybe you're already doing it today, but is that the bigger vision for Bawte, that the tip of the iceberg consumer is this cool app, but below the surface is a ginormous machine?
Yes.
Data.
Yeah. Essentially, that is what it is. It's a platform as much as any. So it's not like like a Snapchat necessarily, although they're kind of turning it into more of a platform. But yeah, it's a platform with a consumer component. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing for that for that manufacturer, that brand.
Jake?
Talking about getting your first couple customers, when you were going through that process, was there something you said to some of those first customers, like your big ones like GE and them, to convince them to sell them on being on that bleeding edge rather than a fast follower?
Yeah, how do you get the quick ones, the first ones?
Yeah, well, I call them the first ones. They definitely weren't the quick ones. Nothing moves as
Wait, what's the
quickly as
advantage
possible.
to them of being on the bleeding edge rather than wait until?
Oh, that's good. So is there an advantage for it to be first?
So essentially, the tack that I took is that they would be able to try it for free for a period of time. So they could figure out what they liked, what they didn't like. I also, and some of them have taken me up on this, some of them don't have the time, but I also created kind of like a steering committee so that they could actually have more input than, say, somebody down the line. So they kind of have a direct channel into product development as opposed to something that, 500 customers in, they're probably not going to have that. So it gives them kind of this exclusivity feeling, which in reality it is.
My question actually dovetailed back to those two. And I mean, you mentioned that you had to find the right customers, and I think it's kind of been answered, but if you expand a bit on what was the right customer for to approach that longer sales cycle?
So it definitely is a company who is open to risk. So they have to have a culture, and this is a top-down thing, that their employees are open to assuming risk. And it's something that in startups we talk about, failure is almost kind of seen as like this really cool thing, even though it doesn't feel cool when it's happening.
No.
This fail fast concept, right? In the corporate world, there's very little of that, right? You fail and people are like, you screwed up. And so there has to be this mentality of, you can fail, you can try things, you can fail, and unfortunately, that's something that you don't know until you start talking to them. The second is they have to be laser focused on their customer.
Right.
So and believe it or not, there's still companies out there that are.
They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Or they're ambivalent to, they're like, oh, we have these products, but if you find a company, at least in our business, that is really, really focused on creating a relationship and an engagement with their end consumer, having those two things marry up is ultimately what we found is the key to finding the right company.
Michael.
I assume that there are some competitors around. How do you distinguish Bawte and services?
Competition, yeah.
Competition. So we consider competition everything from a file cabinet to somebody who's trying to do what we're doing, and everybody in between. So there's a company out there called Trove out of Silicon Valley that kind of is moving into what we're doing. They originally were designed to snap a picture of a piece of art on your wall, and they would value it. So it was kind of almost like an insurance thing, and it was targeted at the top 1% of people in the United States. And then I think they realized that that's a really shitty market.
Those people don't tend to run around snapping pictures of artwork and uploading it. They don't care.
Like, I'm so rich, I don't care.
That's why I have insurance, right? Or I don't need it.
And you've eliminated 99% of the public right from the
Right. Small market.
To things like Evernote, right? I mean, in theory, Evernote could store the same information that we store. So there really isn't anybody who's tackled it from the direction that we're tackling it, but I anticipate that as we grow, there will be kind of copycats come out of the woodwork.
In the back, yeah.
So, John, how do you, what's your vision for marketing to the end user consumer? Because right now, you're getting the manufacturers on board, a lot of information in their boxes, so they'll make some instruction on, download Bawte, etc. But you're still dependent upon the consumer to take action to do that, much like they would have felt the registration part before. So do you see moving into marketing around the consumer, introducing Bawte, not on the manufacturer side, but on the consumer side, to get them thinking about, hey, when I see my Bawte card in my new Yamaha keyboard,
You know what it's for. Yeah, so that's one of the things that we're looking to do at the beginning of 2015. Once we raise the money that we need to in order to expand, is that we'll get into things like consumer evangelism, and that'll include things like partnering with, so a big area for us is juvenile products.
Right.
There's a lot of mommy blogs out there that we can work with. We're already pursuing relationships into parenting magazines, those sorts of things. Partnerships with the Consumer Electronics Association and the Juvenile Products Manufacturers of America.
It's interesting. It's a byproduct, but a lot of VCs, when they're looking at raising, putting capital in companies, or when someone's buying a company, they want to buy a young user base. And it's really kind of interesting if by targeting the young parent, you're basically building a young user base, which is what everybody wants.
Yeah, we essentially see that individual that's going into kind of we're married, we're thinking about children, because anybody who's had children realizes that that's when you accumulate about
all your stuff.
90% of the crap in your house is when you have kids, and
Exactly.
so for us, we can have a user that starts at age 25, 26
Right.
to 30 and go until they're 60, 70, 80.
Sure.
So the engagement is there. So back to answer your question, consumer marketing is definitely something that we're going to attack early 2015, because we would like that when somebody buys something, that they actually look for bought in the box, and that's kind of like our focus.
So, sorry, I don't know if you can get back. That being said then, so GE's a client, or as any new manufacturer comes on, if I now already own a product of theirs, is it retroactive, where I can say, I bought a GE fridge a year ago, will that be able to get into the database?
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that we've been developing is a way to pull in basically every product, regardless of manufacturer participation, because we have, and it's not unique, but a two-sided market, right? We need consumers in order to drive brands, and we need brands to drive the consumers. And so what we did is we said, well, which of those can we control?
Right.
And we said, well, we can't force manufacturers to do this, so we don't control that side of the market. But we could pull in every single product that's out there and control the user side. So that's what we've done. We've built the technology that can go out and, for lack of a better term, because this is the appropriate term, we scrape an amazing amount of data off the internet, so that we, if somebody has a product, I don't know, a Ryobi, cordless hand drill,
Right.
they can enter that independent of that manufacturer ever participating, because ultimately that becomes a wonderful sales tool for us to go, hey, do you realize that 5,000 of your customers are using
Are
this?
in our system.
Yeah, and even down to the point where we're actually looking at giving them access to all of this information, just in free. Here's the information. You can't get to the underlying information, but you can see what's happening with your
Right.
products. It's
Right.
kind of like putting a steak outside of a cage of a lion, right? They really want that steak when they see it, but they don't know that they want it until it's sitting right
Right.
there.
It's true. Yeah, Brad?
So you're in Boulder for 3 months, and now obviously you chose to come back to Des Moines. Maybe can you talk about the differences between the two startup communities, things we could do better, things that we are doing better?
Boulder community versus Des Moines community.
The Boulder community, so I went there and I got legal advice, meetings, help with everything and anything, and it cost me nothing. And that is one specific example, but their established businesses really, really support startups. Not, I'm going to come to a place and talk to you, and then when you need help, I'm going to charge you, $400 an hour, and you're like, $400 an hour? I'm like, I'll take 5 minutes of your time, please. It's that, and so the mindset is very much different in, I will help you, I will get you what you need, And hopefully sometime in the future, you're going to recognize what I did as a contribution and you're going to become my client. And I think that is pervasive
Right.
Throughout that community. You know, Boulder has a really distinct advantage in that Brad Feld is there.
Right.
And we've had discussions, you know, I spoke to Jeff Wood about this, is that Brad had, you know, had the desire and the means to help create a community. And I think that's part of maybe what Des Moines, they don't have that singular figure that has this, you know, this crazy passion to really like help and elevate startups, as well as the means.
And,
to be able to
and,
put
the,
millions.
and the credibility. I mean,
Right.
he's not just a rich guy hanging out saying, I want to play with startups. This is a guy that's actually done some things.
He's done some
I mean,
things,
it's not the
yeah.
most famous, but he's done startups, he's been a VC, he's
Had
walked into...
successful investments.
Yep.
I think those sorts of things, you know, and that's not anything that you can manufacture, but it's, you know, it's one of the differences. And so he's really pulled in, you know, all the businesses.
Right.
And so, you know, you have accountants that come in and help businesses. You have people working on financial models. You have, and it's in essence it's pro bono as a community. And I think that's probably the biggest difference is involvement and assistance. Is that it's very much a like there's this give first mentality. It's written over. If you go into Techstars, you see it all over the place, and that's what it is. It's give first. Don't expect anything in return. Assume you will get nothing in return.
Right.
But you probably will.
Did you see any big corporations involved in that pro bono activity, just to make connections and
Oh, yeah.
spotting?
Yeah, large corporations.
Yeah, we have probably through the Techstars program hundreds of thousands of dollars in free hosting through Rackspace, through Amazon, through Google, through, yeah, it's huge. There's giant, I mean, corporations will come in and spend tens of thousands of dollars for the opportunity to talk to a group of 13 companies.
Right.
Right, and that's just for the opportunity. Then they buy lunch and stuff like that, so there's another couple
Right.
$1,000 in there. So yeah, there's huge companies that come in and give stuff away, and the perks are just like ridiculous.
Right.
You know, from American Airlines to, you know, hosting companies to marketing companies, they absolutely do.
Well, and they see it as the cream of the crop. It's like, how do I go talk to the most likely to succeed startups out there? You were vetted out of the average group in going into a Techstars Accelerator, the applicant pool is 400 to 500 active applicants for 8 to 10 slots.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah, I think for ours, because, and it's kind of different, because when you apply to Techstars, you say what primary location and secondary location. And I think when we did it, it was like Boulder and then Seattle.
Yeah.
And so there were two, and there was you know, I think they said there was a couple thousand applicants.
Yep.
for those two slots.
Because they're two of the most popular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's but you know, that's not saying we're great or anything like that. I mean, really, we have the whole heck of a
No,
lot
it's hard,
other than
but it's hard to get in.
It is hard to get in, but yeah, so yeah, big companies do stuff all the time, and they're not just located. That's the funny thing. All those companies that I mentioned aren't actually located in Boulder.
Right. Mike?
After you graduate from Techstars, what's your continued involvement?
Yeah, how do you stay involved with Techstars? What role do they play, or how are they involved?
So they're an investor, and I keep all investors, you know, updated as to what's going on. So I consider that perspective. But then there's also like the companies that you go through, and you're spending 13 weeks, you know, day and night with them. And so we have we use this app called GroupMe, and we have a channel that'll probably be open forever. And these people are your beck and call. So Techstars Corporate, you know, got Nicole to come in and speak at the Iowa conference.
Which was great, by the way.
Yeah, she's a feisty 5'4" inch.
When the video posts from the Iowa conference, you've got to watch Nicole's video. I got to see that. It's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah,
The message she delivered was.
Yeah, she's good. And so we keep in contact with, with the managing director and the program director, Julie, as well as some of the hack stars and it's a constant thing. I see them as people that I can, reach out to and ask questions and ask favors. And I got, I was looking for a good term sheet template.
Yep.
And somebody who's, one of our classmates who's raised a little over $1 million said, hey, here's one. And it's like, this is the one we're actually using. So just keep it to yourself.
Right.
So,
And the lawyers don't like it, but that's okay.
yeah, that's all right.
Mike's going, no, don't do that.
So kind of a follow-up to the last question. What drove you to come back to Des Moines? Did you consider staying in Boulder or going somewhere else?
I didn't. I always knew I was going to come back. I mean, this is my home, and I'm kind of like I'm a homebody. Even though I do enjoy going out and having a beer too. Des Moines is always my home, and to believe it or not, I really didn't actually do much in Boulder.
You never saw any Boulder.
I never saw. I mean, there's so many cool things to do in Boulder. I saw from the house that I rented to Techstars a lot. I saw that pathway. I didn't really go out and drink beers. I didn't.
You went out for a run once in a while because you posted that to Facebook, but that was about it.
I ran up Mount Sanitas a couple times, but I really didn't do a whole heck of a lot. And I think and this isn't saying necessarily anything about me or about Techstars, but I think it's important to come back and support Des Moines and support the community. And we're as a community of startups, we struggle to have that mass. And if one person goes and leaves, to me it seems like it leaves a void. And so I wanted to make sure that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Did you receive any feedback about being in Des Moines? Is there any pressure to relocate somewhere?
Any pressure to relocate? None?
No. Term sheets are best or something?
No, I mean, I got the question a lot. So you plan on sticking around? And I'd be like, no. I mean, I guess to me that seems really short-sighted. Ultimately, I'm going to have investors from
All over.
all over the place.
Yeah.
What does it matter? I mean, I can jump on a plane and get to Denver in an hour and a half. It takes me longer to drive to Iowa City.
Yep.
So, yeah, so I really, and there were probably 3 or 4 investors that were like, well, we typically like to invest in people in our backyard, and so that we can, and I'm like, okay, then you're probably not the right investor. That's all right.
And if you're an investor in Southern California, there's plenty there in your backyard. But the funny thing is the valuations in that backyard are getting tough. So one of the reasons you're seeing VCs in Iowa and all over the Midwest is because the coasts are getting hard to make money. I mean, the valuations are a little out of line.
And you're seeing seed rounds that are $11 million seed rounds.
Which is nuts.
It's like, I'm pretty certain that
It's not C. I think we're misusing the term at this point.
Yeah. Or if you want to call it, I mean, I
don't want to know what their Series A and B are going to be if it's an 11 million seed.
Or where their valuation would have to be. I mean, because there's this balancing act of value, of real value, right?
Yeah.
So not artificial inflated value, but of real value and progress. And if you're raising $5-10 million in a seed round, your Series A, let's say you raised $10 million. If you wanted, your pre-money valuation would have to be
150?
Well, or 30-40 million, right, in order to get
Least.
dilution of 20%. And so you start looking at it like that. Now you look at your next round,
Right.
and you're like, okay, well now you have to be in that $100 million range in order to get that. You're then going to have the traction in order to support that valuation, and that's where I think a lot of companies get to a point and they talk about the Series A crunch where they get,
the numbers don't work.
Yeah, if you're,
it's real simple.
$150 million pre-money, you better have one hell of a business, or like users. If you have 50 million users,
Yeah.
right, well, you have a community that can that can support that. But yeah, Midwest definitely takes a much more logical approach.
One thing that's happening with the accelerators, we learned a lot when we were doing this whole global insurance accelerator, and that is what really attracts people to an accelerator and sometimes keeps them in the community is when the customers are in that community. So one of the reasons for putting an insurance accelerator in Des Moines is because the customers for those companies will be in Des Moines. So they might want to stay here then. Otherwise, no. Why? We get the same question on the insurance accelerator. Do we have to stay there? No. Are we going to ask you to? Or are we going to, nicely say you ought to come and take a look at our city while you're here? Sure, why not? Of course we'll try it, but I don't think it's very common to say it's a requirement.
Yeah, typically not a requirement.
Few investors,
they
but
enjoy,
Oh,
there was
sure.
a company that was from LA, and they relocated to Boulder, which is great.
It's a cool community. I mean,
It is a really cool
it's a cool place to be.
But when the super volcano explodes.
It won't matter where you are. Yeah.
Kind of a right turn question. So among your fellow classmates at Techstars and other people there, did you see a company that you thought, oh, wow, that's going to be big?
Yeah.
Anything stand out?
Yeah, so there's this one company, and I think it's awesome. They're still a ways away. It's called, well, they originally called Loop. They're now called Notion, because I think they ran into some trademarking issues. It's a little puck that you can stick it to anything, and it will measure things like temperature, moisture, movement. It even does natural frequency, so you can put it on a propane tank, and it'll tell you before the propane tank is like empty. Basically, it's one sensor that can do anything, and you set it to, you tell it when you do this light flash process that identifies it. You say, oh, I want you to do motion and temperature. And it's really cool. They raised like close to $300,000 on Kickstarter.
I believe it.
And yeah, it's a really cool one. And then there's one that's called the Lassie Project, which I don't know from a monetization perspective how it's going to work, but it's for missing children. So it allows kids to have any sort of GPS-enabled device, and if they go off a certain path, it notifies, their parents, and then if their parents realize that this is something legitimate, anybody who has the app, it creates this kind of this ring of like, everybody look for this kid, and they
So it's geolocate plus crowdsource.
Right, plus crowdsource finding. And,
Nice.
And they have a deal with Life Touch, the studio that does all the school pictures.
Right.
And so it always brings in updated pictures and updated information.
Smart.
And it's really cool, especially if you have kids and you worry about, what if they're, what if. Yeah. And it can work with, they could have just a GPS. They don't have to have a phone necessarily, but something that's GPS enabled that you can.
And there's a lot of those devices already out there now. They're everywhere.
Yep. There's tons.
I have friends that have them snapped on the kids' backpacks, the little bitty ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could be any of those.
Yep.
And so it's a really cool idea, especially considering if you've ever gotten those little alerts on your phone, and it just says somebody's gone missing.
Amber alerts, right?
Right? And you're like, oh.
How do I help?
They could be next to me.
Yep.
And I would have absolutely
no idea.
So it's pretty cool.
One in the back.
Have some through this process that you have something that you either fought hard to keep or regretted losing during the process, like some facet of
Anything you fought for or regretted on the product side mostly? On the product?
Almost. So so there was a point. I'm sure if you read through like my blog post, you'd probably actually be able to pick it out. But I forget what week it was where I started like the feedback that we got was so all over the map.
I remember that post.
Yeah.
You were down.
And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I came up with this idea, and like I sat down, and Nicole was like, why did you start this company? Why? And I'm like, oh shit. And so we had this discussion, and I was starting to doubt all of these things about what we were doing, and she's like, take take
breathe.
a break, breathe, and we would have made some really wholesale changes that, in hindsight, I don't think would have been very good for what our mission as a company is. And so we almost got to the point where I was going to throw away pretty much everything that we had done and do something totally different. Without her sitting me down, I think I really would have regretted that. So we didn't actually do that, but there was a possibility there, because you get so many people with so many different opinions that it really throws you for a loop.
I think that's something people don't understand about an accelerator. I mean, one of the things, you're going to get all these opinions, and a lot of them aren't going to be right. And it's not about whether they're right. It's about you learning to deal with the objection. Okay? If everybody's going to object on X, but you've got the right product, then you just have to be able to deal with the objection, not, okay, I got to change for you, change for you, change for you. You can't build a product for everybody.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and that's the same way with pitch too. I mean, there was a point where I got to with pitch that I was very comfortable with it, and somebody would say, "Well, I don't get that," and I'd be like, "Well, that's too bad for you." Sorry, not
everybody's going to get it.
We can't change it for you.
We got time for one more question before we wrap it up. Oh, that was amazing timing. How did it? Yeah, right here in the front.
From the inception of your startup, what do you feel your biggest challenge was, and how did you overcome that?
From inception, dude. It's been a long road. You're almost 3 years into this one.
Yeah. Probably the biggest challenge was our cap table, and and there's a blog post on this one as well. Every business that I've started up until this point, I've had a partner, and we've never had to raise any capital or anything like that. So our cap table could look like whatever we wanted it, right? Well, as part of getting into Techstars, Nicole said, "Well, you can't have silent partner, right? You can't have 50% of the company. Nobody's going to invest because, John, you working in the company are going to get diluted to a point where you're not going to give a shit.
That guy's going to own most of the company and not have a role.
Yeah, not have a role. So, because they look at founders as a group, right? So if you have two founders that comprise 80%, well, that's fine, even though each one, as long as they're both working in the business. That process of disengaging.
How long have you been with your partner?
I mean, we've started businesses since 2000. So this was 15 years.
You effectively got divorced from your business partner.
Right, absolutely. And it was awful. It was, heart-wrenching, and it was, you always feel like you're getting screwed, and so I had to sell my piece of another company that we had started. So I sold that, he sold a portion of Bawte, and we worked out this arrangement. But getting to the point where we were able to do that was hell. It was absolutely harder than anything that I've had to do, from business development to legal to you name it. That was by far and away the most difficult.
And I know his partner, these guys were pretty close for a long, long time. Have gone through a lot together, so it was truly like getting a divorce.
Yes, it really was.
Well, hey, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. Give you a hand.